This is a Clouds weather alert.
Meteorologist Casey Cloud live with you here early on this Monday morning. We have a tornado warning just outside of our covered area. A severe thunderstorm warning that does include portions of Franklin County here with the tornado possible tag. I know we have rotation that's kind of prompting all this offshore right now, but moving toward areas in and around Mexico Beach there. So we've been seeing some very tight rotation with this here. And we're seeing winds potentially over 100 miles an hour with this right now. It was showing 150 miles per hour, if you can believe it, just a little while ago. That's why I've kind of upped the ante here. We've turned the logo red because of what we're seeing here. I know the instability will lack some as it gets in, but there is still enough surface-based cape in my assessment, at least along the immediate coast here, to have some concern of, a significant tornado. So we're upping the ante with all of that, turning the logo red here, and just really warning people to take this very seriously, as this is something you don't see too often here in terms of the water spout potential being just so significant here. As we were looking at things, looking at this, it was looking like indicative of a strong tornado there in terms of that, circulation right now over water, be a strong, water spout there. But again, a dangerous situation right now, as we do have the red box that is just, stopping short of our covered area, but the yellow box does include portions of Franklin County here. So an odd situation as we're dealing with it, as we're tracking it here. We're just trying to, be very mindful of what could happen. When I say a strong tornado, I mean winds to about 115 miles per hour. So we're going to back this up here. We're watching things. We're starting to see kind of a situation here where it's broadening out a little bit, but we're still seeing some very strong winds with this as it moves closer towards shore. We're talking about winds there. One way, 60 miles an hour away from the Eglin radar site, 60 toward the radar. So if this tightens back up, you have that strong tornado potential coming into play here once again. So we need to be very mindful of what could happen. And there's, past 8 o'clock Eastern here, there's not a formal risk, but we do have, the concern here that's really escalated in that localized slot after everything that happened last night in Central Florida, where the models were completely just missing the overall flood threat there, where some areas were expected maybe only, with the models showing an inch or two. They ended up getting 1.5 foot there around Lake County, around Brevard County, give or take 12 to 18 inches. Lake County was, the area where we had closer to 18. I know that's south of our area. This is just west, but now trying to enter in our area here. I think because of our hurricane, which is not Cat 5, by the way, Melissa to the south, we have the high pressure to the north. We have a boundary here and another boundary, and the models just, aren't dealing with things right. And Melissa's helping to kind of, just overall here with this contrast, worsen everything that we're seeing here compared to what the models things to be happening. So, the high-res models aren't necessarily going to be looking at Melissa, but its influence is there in the overall atmosphere. So, it's a tricky situation here. So, I want to go ahead and escalate our coverage a little bit right now based on what we're seeing. It's not a guarantee. This is a very uncertain forecast here, and I don't think it's going to be, for a lot of our areas still. Even though I say this, I think our Georgia County, there could be some flood threats, sure, but it's severe threat in Georgia probably won't really materialize. It's more about our Florida counties. The further south you go in general here, where we have more instability. So, it may end up just being more of a, Big Bend thing here, and then it kind of gets offshore, fades away. That's what some of the models are showing, with hints. So it's a very tricky situation, very tricky. Your significant tornado parameter, your supercell composite. This is a very tricky forecast, but we're going to go ahead and look here right now as we look toward the south. And that's just a general thunderstorm risk. A lot of our area, even though, some area will see some very volatile conditions, a lot of area won't get a lot of rain. Some areas will have some very significant weather, though. So we have Melissa to the south here, folks. Let me go ahead and put on the infrared look here. I put this into the special mode as I go ahead and take off our tornado warning safety tips. They're going to need them down there in parts of Jamaica as well, obviously, because of Melissa. But these winds of the actual hurricane, if it was the U.S., you'd have extreme wind warnings, and those winds would be even stronger than the tornadoes. It's just a monster Melissa is there. As it's headed toward Jamaica, I had it on kind of the floating satellite view here. Let me go ahead and put it on another view, and then I'll even put it on a different view so you have it covering the whole region. I know this is not connected directly, to our weather up here, but it's the squeeze play going on. Plus, we have boundaries here, and there's low pressure, and other ones that we're talking about too. That we have these have a tricky situation here, folks. Very tricky situation that we want to be very mindful of here. Again, we have a tornado warning just west of our Edward Bay and Gulf until 7 o'clock Central, which is 8 o'clock Eastern. And then we have a severe thunderstorm warning that doesn't include portions of Franklin, which is our covered area here. You see this rotation? I know it's a situation here. I'll go ahead and remind you guys of our covered area. This is a very unique scenario. We haven't had that much active weather in a while, so it's one where, we're kind of maybe, kind of escalating things. We want to be on the side of caution. But just after what happened yesterday, I'm not trusting the models very much, quite honestly. After that was a debacle there in Central Florida, to be quite honest, where the models, HRRR, was only on a couple inches. They got 18 inches in some areas. So we need to be very careful here with this and just watch this minute by minute. As you see here, we're in Bradford, but we have Franklin under a severe thunderstorm warning with a tornado possible tag. And just outside of that's where the tornado warning is. We wanted to get a jump on this because of how volatile this was looking over the Gulf, where there is quite a bit more instability, mind you. We were seeing the winds here and the energy mix to get winds to 150 miles an hour. It's weakened down, a good bit here in the latest frames as it gets closer, which you'd kind of expect is weakened quite a bit, which is great. But it could still tighten back up. There's still that potential here that it tightens back up. As we show you here, the tornado safety tips: you want to seek such and such a sturdy building. Get as many walls between you and the outside as possible and protect yourself from flying debris by putting on a bicycle helmet. So we need people very mindful here of this overall scenario meteorologically. We need to be very aware here and taking precautions. This, I tweeted out earlier, Franklin and Gulf here. Well, add Bay into that. It's kind of the overall wind rotation here's kind of nudged more toward Bay. Bay and Gulf are not our area. I put Gulf in there because I know that's before Franklin, kind of almost no matter what along the coast here. So, but it has kind of shifted a little north of this. It could even be a Liberty County story based on some of these different shifts here. And we have a mesoscale discussing as well, and that kind of indicates Liberty, in that area of concern as well here. So it's kind of erratic in some cases. We've seen some shifts in direction here with this. But if you're watching, let me reiterate something real quick. I know we have probably people watching from Stark. You're probably worried, well, for now, we're good. Now, things can change. Don't get me wrong, and we'll have that chance of Saturn storms. But it's certain areas here toward the Big Bend. That's where I'm really concerned. And then our southern flank, we may get something on Stark, but that'd be this afternoon. This morning to be okay around Stark based on my assessment of things, combining just looking at all the meteorological charts here with the models. You can't just look at the models, not after what happened yesterday there, that's for sure. I mean, that's a rule of thumb in meteorology. But again, we had 18 inches of rain there toward Lake County in Florida, give or take, according to Weather Service. In Melbourne, we had 12 plus in Brevard County. The models were not showing anything like that there. So I just want to be very careful with this. We had the flow coming, the winds coming out of the east. We still have that until we get the boundary to pass. That's going to bring much, a drier type of air into the picture as we look, especially later in the week. We're going to have some more of that with even more, of the temperatures, getting further down there toward Halloween. But as we go ahead and look right now, we have this tornado warning. We have this situation here. Let me check our velocity. It's tightening back up. That's why you just can't lay your guard down in this situation. I am thinking we still could have a strong tornado with this here, folks, as it comes in. It's not something we see very often in Florida, not something that you can normally say at a head like this. I don't know if I've ever had to say that about something, especially when we don't have a formal risk in an hour as of this moment here. But we have to give people that, precautionary details here as we're looking and as we're tracking things here. We want people to take this very seriously. F2 tornado, strong tornado is that or higher. That means considerable damage, winds of 111 miles an hour or greater here, a possibility. As we go over the storm relative velocity right now, it's showing winds there. I mean, if you add this here, where I put the mouse on, and you add this, that's 70, and we just got that to update a little. Okay, let me check that. Broadened a little bit, which is what we want to see. Sometimes you can have some different things go on here, different interactions. Yeah, we just had an interaction there. That could help us a little bit. We'll see. There's still gonna be a lot of wind with this, though, no matter what coming into Mexico Beach. But yeah, that scan before was showing though the potential of winds to about 120 miles an hour there with a tornado. Now it says more of a wind situation where if you're not getting a tornado out of this, maybe 70-mile-an-hour winds because you don't have them gate to gate. Maybe 70-mile-an-hour winds, or maybe you kind of you could get a burst of wind here a little bit higher. But again, we have a active weather situation. This is a very tricky forecasting that we're having to do here right now because the models here uh, did not do well yesterday outside of our covered area to the south, and now this is moving in from the west here toward our western areas here this morning. We really didn't have anything too crazy in our area yesterday. We had about 5 inches St. John's and a few backyards there, but it wasn't terrible because we did need the rain and it fell over a long enough period of time and not in the most urban areas like St. Augustine. But we had 18 inches toward, Mount Dora area, give or take. And that was a catastrophic situation. I mean, we're talking about down there, just outside of our area, a scenario. And let me see if it's still, I don't know if they've updated this. I know we're bouncing between a bunch of stuff. We haven't had to do this in a while, but let me go to the Melbourne radar, see if it's still up on the storm total, because it'd be helpful if it was. Yeah, there you go. There's extraordinary numbers here on this. We're going to go ahead and take wind speeds off so I can clean this up a little bit. We're talking about some areas here where there have been media reports of at least one road collapse there in Central Florida, according to WOFL TV there. Sinkholes forming in a few spots, so not good at all here. I mean, we're talking about areas there in Lake County around 7 inches, maybe Tavera, you said that area there, but Eustis showing about a foot on radar, but it could have been worse than that even. Mount Dora, my estimators showing here about 14 inches, but again, the Weather Service thinks it could have been closer to 18 based on their warning with the emergency last night. Brevard County, another bullseye here. We're talking about some areas well over a foot of rain down there. I know there is so much going on here with this. I know right now they're not really getting a precip, which is great. They might get more later today, so even a few inches could aggravate things. The flood watch does continue down there because of that now. As we're looking and as we're tracking things here, I'm going to show you though real quick some of these cameras in toward the area down there because there has been some, flooding that's still remaining here this morning toward the Mount Dora area. For instance, let's take you to a live traffic camera look. This is 8 hours after we were on last night, give or take, with this, and we're going to take you to a live look at the flooding and the floodwaters that are not receding there in Lake County there in Central Florida. Again, this is not what you want to see. This is a US 441 just covered with water. Looks like a car maybe, either trying to get through it or stranded down there. As I'm looking, at it there, they might, be trying to make it through that, but it's not a good situation down there as we start to get first light on this. We started to get first light here. This is in Lake County as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things. They had 18 inches of rain, give or take, last night. And, even into last night, this awful situation. And the models handled, sadly, very poorly. As we go ahead and, we await, reports of anybody, was injured by this. It's not a good situation there. As we go ahead, I know the radar looks and is clear there right now, but we had all that rain last night. Let me go to see if I can pull up a Brevard County traffic camera on Titusville as we go ahead and go over there. See if we can kind of show you some of the remnants there of all that flooding. Again, it's a very complicated weather pattern for sure. I'm just looking here real quick at some of these on the fly. If I don't find it too quick, we need to go back to that tornado warning, obviously. This is west of our area. Can't look at this for too much longer here. I'm just trying to see if I can pull one up. Okay, we'll pull one up. I don't know if this is, at this point, maybe the water has receded in some areas. We're on the, fly with all this, but you see, it looks like this is an area where it did have problems. You see some cones still out, better toward Brevard County, but some of those other low-lying roads, I'm sure, are still having problems after a foot of rain, and they've been pretty wet down there compared to other parts in the state. So that's the storyline there. We need to get back to the tornado warning right now, though. It's just outside of the area the tornado warning is, but it's moving, with the severe threat, ultimately it's going to be getting into our area of a severe thunderstorm warning for portions of Franklin, a very small sliver of Franklin at this point, until 8:15 a.m. Eastern time. That does include a little bit, of Franklin there west of Apalachicola, really. Talking about Indian Pass area there. That's, kind of more in Gulf, but you get the idea. We have this rotation, and at the moment it looks like it is something that is broad in a way, but the next frame we could have the pixels really bright and really tight next to each other as this gets over land. This is a big problem for areas there. Mexico Beach over toward Beacon Hill. I know it's weird. We're on in a way with this because it's technically not our area for some of this, but the danger was just so great with this. So we felt that this could be a strong tornado and it's ultimately going to be tracking into our area. Hopefully by the time it gets, into our area, it'll weaken more than maybe we would, think. But at sunrise like this, you already have some instability coming in. I kind of doubt it. I mean, in that it's going to weaken a whole bunch for a while. We'll probably still get severe thunderstorm warnings with this, pretty far in there. But this is headed in. I mean, this is nothing like Hurricane Michael necessarily. When you hear Mexico Beach, you probably think of Hurricane Michael, but it's still going to be a big problem for that area. A little over 7 years since that, fateful day, October 10th, 2018. I mean, this could still cause quite a bit of damage around Mexico Beach if this tornado does in fact, really be a scenario here where it's in progress, it's touching down. The water spout comes on shore as a tornado and potentially even a strong tornado here based on what I'm seeing in the weather center. Again, this is getting closer and closer. You're seeing some of these winds out ahead. The winds are probably picking up there in Mexico Beach, but the spin is right out here, folks. Let me do a better job with that right in there. Let me go ahead and put a rotational tracker up. I want to get a measurement on this. Okay, so probably about 4 miles from the coast here. So, I know we were thinking 20 miles an hour maybe, so that means within 10 minutes it'll probably be on shore here around Mexico Beach. As this comes on in now, again, a very volatile looking storm. We don't just turn our logo red here for something, that is random like this, unless we're really seeing a heightened concern. And that's what we're seeing right now here for our friends just outside of our covered area. But we do have the severe thunderstorm warning, including portions of Franklin with this. And it's a sign of things to come that we could get this threat to push further on into our area here. So we very rarely are tracking water spouts coming on shore like this. But these winds are just, the overall winds, if they tighten back up again, you have 84 one way, you have 60-something the other way, and they're tightening back up again. It's just the overall potential with this is concerning, is extreme here, really, because that means you can get a strong tornado. Latest scan now, that's showing gate to gate there of 70 one way, 45 the other way. That's about 115 miles an hour there on the map. So that is a problem. That could be a strong tornado, folks. That could be Category 3 hurricane type of winds here in a very confined area, mind you, half a mile or less probably, in the width as we're looking at this. But still, as we're looking here, this could be something that is very concerning, causes significant damage here. You need to take shelter in Mexico Beach and Beacon Hill. This is something where this is a call to action here, folks. Again, a tornado warning, potentially a strong tornado is moving in here. The strong tornadoes, those weren't really in the forecast. Well, we're calling it now. We need folks to take shelter. We need you guys to take shelter here right away in toward this area. This is very dangerous, folks. We need you to take this very seriously. as we're looking at things, as we're tracking them here this morning. I know we're getting the latest updates in. We're just trying to watch for everything. Let me see if there are any questions or comments from any of the viewers here at home. Again, very concerned about this storm, obviously. The heightened level of concern. I know it's very early, but we have to be with this right now because of the danger that folks are in here right now. You can see 100 miles per hour worth of wind, potentially with a tornado coming in here, give or take. Mexico Beach to Beacon Hill. If you know anybody in that Bay, Gulf County area there, they need to be, taking shelter. Interior room away from windows. Get as many walls between you and the outside as possible. Protect yourself from flying by putting on a bicycle helmet here, a football helmet, something like that, a baseball helmet at lowest floor. With flooding, you want to get higher up. With a tornado, you want to get lower down. You want to go ahead and get in the interior room as well. Take shelter now. I know we don't have basements there, but we need you guys at the lowest floor here. This is a very significant signature. We're talking about winds here, folks. I'm double checking my pixels with this. This is showing winds of 130 miles an hour coming in Mexico Beach to Beacon Hill. This is just outside the covered area, but we're very concerned. We're talking about a potentially EF2 type of tornado coming in here into parts of Southern Bay County, or maybe, call it into ultimately Gulf County as well. Let's see another look. This is very concerning. If you have loved ones around Mexico Beach, call them now. This is a dire situation for something within the Tallahassee Weather Service office jurisdiction, especially with the chances not being all that high. There's not a tornado watch. This is taking that escalation here. We really needed to take this as seriously as possible here on Mexico Beach. I'm switching to another mode here. The latest scan. We have 65 one way. We have about 60 the other way. That's winds 125 miles an hour coming in around Mexico Beach right now with a potential tornado. Again, we need you guys taking shelter. Let's see if the water, I was wondering if the water will be coming up, but once this gets on shore, you'll probably see a debris signature from an actual tornado, and that's what it is when it's over land. You'll see debris flying up here within the correlation coefficient. It'll get a blue area show up. We need you in shelter. We need you in shelter now here around Mexico Beach. Interior room away from windows. It was 6:25 in the morning out there. This is a life-threatening weather situation here around Mexico Beach. Again, this is very serious stuff. Moving right there toward US 98 there on Mexico Beach. Again, this is a life-threatening weather situation for our friends over there. This is very serious stuff. I know we don't really have a great view of it in terms of camera. We do have a view at Cape San Blas. If it was looking in the right direction, at least there might be a chance of seeing something. So I see some flashes that are kind of like concerning, like power flashes. So this is pretty far away. It is looking off toward the west here. This is from the Cape San Blas area, but that is a frightening look into this from a distance here, folks. Again, this is a very serious weather situation. We need you in shelter. Mexico Beach, Beacon Hill, I know around US 98 here. This is very serious, folks. We need you in shelter immediately. We could be talking about winds in excess of 115 miles an hour coming into these areas with a strong tornado. We need you in shelter immediately here in toward those areas. This is a life-threatening situation. We got to get folks into shelter there in toward that part of Bay and Gulf counties. It could be lightning, it could be power flashes, but it's very concerning. That view is for sure from the distance here. As we're looking from the Cape San Blas camera, a good ways away, but I mean, looking off toward the west and, right at the water light, this might be able to get a little bit more, of that view. I know, it's a very serious situation, folks. I'm going to go ahead and jump back on over to our other view. I know Cape San Blas, again, looking pretty far away, from there. Just getting my bearings here with some things down in here, but you're looking kind of at the overall picture, and something behind it kind of concerning too, but that front one is this is probably coming in on them right now. This is 2 minutes behind, so we could have a tornado coming right along US 98. There are a lot of homes here, folks. Mexico Beach, take shelter. This is your last chance to do it, potentially. If it's not already moving in, this is a life-threatening situation. A tornado, potentially a large tornado headed toward US 98 here, folks. This is very serious stuff. We need you in shelter there around Mexico Beach immediately. Checking debris tracker here right now. Again, very concerned about the Mexico Beach area. This is a dire situation. Bay and Gulf counties here. A potentially large and strong tornado coming in here based on everything I'm seeing. And now, okay, the latest scan, we now have that there over land. Do we get a debris signature with this? It may take one more scan to get it. It is rain wrapped in here. As it's coming on in on them now. We're looking about 3,000 feet up. Again, this is very serious. I'm just checking some of my different sources here. .628 Eastern, or 6:28 Central, 7:28 Eastern. Meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center. We don't want to see a debris signature, but I'm kind of waiting because I think we're going to have that on the next scan. If we don't, it would be, you know, something where maybe we got lucky and this was not, you know, reaching the surface in you know, a, you know, long extended path maybe. But you can't tell from just that one scan. It's, you know, hadn't been over landing up. I feel like we're going to get a blue dot on this here, and it's just going to be pretty significant. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I am. I may be. We haven't seen the Weather Service confirm it yet, even though we had some extreme rotation there on velocity, on shear rate products. I'm just kind of waiting. You know, by the time you see the blue, though, on that, it would mean it's already caused maybe significant damage there around Mexico Beach, there around US 98, toward that area, toward that part of Bay County, which will be, you know, ultimately watching to get into toward Gulf County here over the next little bit. Again, we're checking here. I'm going to check another source, see if it updates any quicker. I think there may be a little something, but still being sheltered in Mexico Beach. This is a very volatile situation. It's not as obvious as it could be here, but there may be a little something in here that's not as bad as I thought it could be. I'm drawing this on here if you guys are wondering what I'm doing. Let me check another vantage point on this here. Well, that shows broader on that, but we have some more spin back behind. Checking some different things here. Check another radar view. That blue there might not have been indicative of something I do. But yeah, that shows it really bad from Tallahassee aloft there. But it doesn't show the debris, which I'm a little surprised by, to be quite honest. But it may take time. It may still be really bad there, and we don't know for another scan or two because it takes a little bit of time. Again, just trying to give you guys the latest here. Again, checking my other notes here. We got the Weather Service warning system up. Just trying to see if we have any damage reports. They haven't confirmed this yet, which, you know, may just take time. You know, It'd be a miracle if this wasn't touching down. I'm not really seeing the debris there. I am surprised, but that didn't mean it still couldn't be, producing some very significant winds in there. Power outages, still could have quite a bit of damage if we didn't have a tornado in here somehow. Because I would think we'd see debris drop out by now. Let me check some of the boundaries. And we have some rotation from Beacon Hill coming in though. Just don't lay your guard down here because we have more spins within the rainfall, the heavy rain here, folks. So don't lay your guard down with this. We have some supercell composite values. They're pretty significant, indicating that rotation, some significant trigger parameters up there, and then the instability nudging in enough here that I think we'd have some issues. So again, trying to check some things here. I'm going to pull that camera up again. Bear with me. That's a pretty good ways away, but if anything, it could be some of the other storms there in toward the Gulf as well, kind of. The tops of those. As we look here from Cape San Blas. Again, a dangerous situation here. See all those flashes. It may just be lightning in there. Because if we're looking due west, it's more over the Gulf, so obviously we don't really have much to cause power flashes. This just has an interesting look from a distance for sure. It just depends on if this is due west or if it's looking more northwest. Don't lay your guard down around here. Because we could get something to tighten up in all this mess here all of a sudden that becomes strong. Maybe it won't be over as, big of a population as you lose the population real quick once you go inland here on this, in this area. Still could be causing a lot of power outages and just damage in general, even if it's not lopped in it as a tornado would. Gonna check power.us here. A little too early to get any numbers, probably. Just a handful out in Bay, but that's not been updated since 9 minutes ago. So. Again, trying to keep you up to date. Riding this view, there's still a lot of wind. I mean, there's still a lot of wind here with this. I still think there's probably been some damage there on Mexico Beach. It could still be pretty significant. But it's possible some of this ends up being from straight line winds because you get a debris signature for this tornadic and actually lofting that debris more than likely anyway. So that's a surprise based on how tight the circulation was with the gate to gate on this at points. I mean, we're not that far up on the radar either. I've seen it from more than one radar perspective as I switch over to Tallahassee. It still shows it there. Don't really see, anything that indicates debris there. Let's check we'll check way up here. A little bit broader further up at the moment. But Yeah, you've seen some of those brighter colors even there. I still think this has caused some damage there. I mean, I'm sure it's caused some damage in that area just from the force of the winds if they weren't actually, producing a tornado being, maybe they weren't quite tight together like it looked just a little aloft and right of it. I'm still sure some of those winds still are maybe even at this moment getting down there pretty significantly to the surface there on Mexico Beach. Is still kind of just hanging around. Some very heavy rain in that area. Let's check rainfall last hour. It's not really picking it up down there yet, but some of these areas 3 inches in the last hour in the vicinity. Just extraordinarily high SEER values, but so far, for whatever reason, it doesn't seem that we've seen a significant tornado with this based on not getting debris signature. But I still think there's going to be some wind damage in here anyway, maybe a tornado at points. I mean, we're still seeing 80-mile-an-hour winds here on the face velocity. Still hitting on Mexico Beach, so at some point, some of this might be getting down to the surface and causing pretty big problems there. I mean, like, not that it's a hurricane, it's obviously not, but I mean, in a hurricane, you don't have debris signature unless you're having tornadoes. It's about the way the winds are touching down and lofting debris. We could just be having a bunch of straight line wind in there that's causing big problems, but it's not actually getting lofted as so a debris signature. That's possible because, with these type of winds here, this is not something you'd always say, but the type of winds we're seeing here, I think it's a possibility. That latest scan, weaker there. That's some good news. Maybe a tad bit of something there, though. Not maybe what you'd expect, but those last two scans, maybe a little something. Maybe. It's still not what you'd anticipate, though, based on how strong this was. But maybe the last two scans were a little something indicative of some debris, possibly. And maybe it's broadening now. That's a possibility. Checking this tornado warning, obviously. Expired in 19 minutes. So right here, that's at 6:36 Central. But that scan likes to run fast on me. And then we'll go to the current frame here. And that looks like it'd be right in the spot for it. Again, we're still with you here. Very tricky situation, obviously. It's still close enough to the coast. This could still try to tighten up. I'm not sure that it would tighten up to the level it looked like earlier on, but it doesn't mean it wouldn't produce later. Things are tricky like that here in meteorology. Again, just checking the latest. Trying to give you the latest updates. It's all about protecting you, your friends, and your family. Just checking things here. Again, we're live on the air with this. Okay, so if you're just tuning in, we had a very, very concerning circulation here headed toward the Mexico Beach area. There seems to have been some weakening, but still some very strong winds overall showing up on the Doppler velocities there. So we still could have had some notable wind damage or even a brief tornado touchdown within all that based on a little bit of a debris signature that was kind of popping up past Mexico Beach. So we'll have to wait for, official word on all that. See what type of damage reports may be receiving. Let's get back to Melissa, though. That, the story, that's a very big headline in the weather community. Obviously, Jamaica gonna experience some, catastrophic damage here. Some catastrophic damage as we're looking in the days to come. So let me go ahead and switch this on over. Let me get my tornado warning information off first. As we continue along, it's different having to switch between two different areas like this, but I think it's important. I haven't had to do this in a while. You're in such a fluid situation, but Jamaica there, you see it. So that's Jamaica and this monster hurricane. There's unfortunately, unlike maybe what we saw to some degree in parts of Gulf and Bay counties there, we got lucky to some degree. Maybe a little bit of Jamaica gets lucky, but a lot of areas are going to see total devastation here, folks. This is going to be a monster hurricane coming on in here. A monster hurricane, Cat 5 is what we have based on the latest update from the Hurricane Center in Miami. This max sustained winds 160 miles an hour. Just an awful, awful situation there. And the hurricane hunters have been out there. Look at some of these winds, and looks like they have 167 knots there. Yikes. On that, 167 knots here. As we look at things and as we track with some of that information, if they actually take those to be, valid, we could be seeing an upgrade all the way to a, like 190 mile an hour hurricane with max sustain. That's similar to what Dorian had when it was, impacting the Bahamas there and caused this total devastation in 2019. It was a slow mover there. So some, some type of, similarities between Dorian, unfortunately, in the Bahamas in 2019 and here Melissa for Jamaica in 2025. So you have to be very, very, mindful. Keep everybody down there in Jamaica in our thoughts and prayers, as this looks like a very big tragedy in the making there. Folks need to try to get to a, more protected area inland, but, you gotta watch out for those mudslides and those landslides. Yeah, even have a tornado threat in there. You have just the wind as you get higher up, that's going to be stronger. So it's a very odd situation here, in that you just don't have many safe places to go. It's going to be a very fluid scenario for folks in Jamaica. Things are not looking good for them. As we go ahead and switch back on over to the Doppler right now, we have this severe thunderstorm warning for a little bit of Franklin in our area. This is a slow moving, area with the rotation, that's for sure. But it is over land now. It is over land. It definitely looks a lot broader on some of my scans. I feel like I may have had a brief tornado touchdown, but the velocities were indicating there was a potential for a strong tornado in there. I don't think we necessarily had that, but I think we had some significant winds in there, potentially straight line at points. That did probably cause a good bit of, unfortunately, damage there on Mexico Beach. So that's kind of what we're looking right now. Again, we're continuing to give you the latest. It's tricky in Mexico Beach because You know, a lot of times when we're in an inland area, we can just say, well, we don't have the debris signature, we don't have to take it to the highest level of concern here. You can just kind of play it out and then, you know, treat it as a formal tornado warning, you know, this is like a base one, but then, you know, just kind of say, well, you know, if we see that debris, then we really up our tone. But here, maybe you get some of that water sewn up as debris, but it's not. You know, sometimes it might just all of a sudden show the debris signature when it hits land. And then, you know, by then it's too late to get that escalated tone. So it's a very tricky situation there in that regard. We're trying to do the best here to keep folks safe. I think there may still be something in there. When I look at that, it looks like just a tad bit, actually. Not, you know, an overwhelming one by any stretch. Not indicative of a strong tornado here like we thought would happen potentially, but indicative of something there. You know, something that was causing some type of damage, maybe. Could just be, you know, some significant straight line winds. We just got the update on Melissa, by the way, with the advisory from the Hurricane Center of Miami. Well, they're staying with 160 on the winds. And sometimes those estimates here are, you know, just kind of have to have, go with what they have with 160, because sometimes I say estimates, actually readings, the right word for that, with the aircraft. Sometimes those could read a little bit high. So still, Cat 5 is terrible. I mean, 160, 190, both are very bad for those folks down there. Again, this is a very fluid forecast up here, though, because even though we're not getting direct impacts, we're getting the influence because of the pressure patterns from Melissa here. It's kind of a tricky situation here for folks as we're tracking things here. Just trying to give you guys the very latest. The forecast modeling after what happened to Central Florida last night, you know, you can't ever be certain about this. Again, Mount Dore, some of those areas getting around 18 inches of rain, based on what the weather service in Melbourne was saying. Brevard, 12 plus inches of rain there around Titusville, give or take. It's not good at all. But here's the modeling. 9 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Eastern, 11 o'clock. You see some of that hanging around Liberty and Franklin. Maybe a threat here, you know, even a few hours from now. You see noon Eastern, 1 o'clock, and maybe out in the Gulf, maybe not as much of a threat again. Yesterday, the model, you know, guidance completely messed up there for Central Florida. We're looking at this, and they had all that flooding, so you never know, but you see some development maybe around 6 o'clock, according to this 7, 8. You start to see more of that now toward the First Coast region. We'll have to watch to see how that kind of materializes there as we, you know, approach sunset, give or take. But it may not play out like that. It's kind of a low confidence forecast after what happened yesterday down toward Central Florida. Again, looking there, Gulf County with a very strong wind showing up still, but the rotation does not look that tight now. It looks a lot more diffuse, which is some good news here. Just have to continue to give you guys the very latest here on what's happening. Okay, we do have some power that's showing up in Gulf County now. Duke Energy has 2,244 customers reported being in the dark there. So that's a, you know, for that area that didn't have that much population to begin with in terms of the numbers. It's a decent number, unfortunately. That's 17% of the county without power now, Gulf County. So something happened down there with some of these winds, ferocious winds coming in, whether it was tornado type of winds, maybe, you know, a little bit here and there, but maybe not as much as we were thinking initially, but still some damage with the power outages. There's some wind damage, I'm sure, in toward that area. Okay, you hear that beep. It just expired. Weather Service in Tallahassee did that tornado warning for Gulf and Bay counties there. We noticed severe thunderstorm warning for the region, but yeah. Okay, so Mexico Beach there. I'm just checking some of my numbers. Yeah, right around Mexico Beach is we have 2,000 customers in the dark. I know it tracks at the Gulf here, and it's kind of right on the edge, but actually some of that's in Bay there, really, because I'm looking at some of these other maps, Duke Energy maps. So we've had some wind damage there, I would think, at least at the minimum there. So this was sometime, some type of damaging event for these folks. Again, still with you here, tracking things. Eventually moving on into Franklin County here. I feel like, based on what I'm seeing, the trend will probably get a severe thunderstorm warning extended further over, into our official covered area. Again, still with you here, giving you the latest on this. Again, we had a very significant area of spin showing up on the velocities here a little while ago. I mean, over the Gulf, it was, winds there, upward of 150 with the water spout, numbers there. And they got closer to weakened some, but still seeing around 100 as it was coming on shore. And again, surprising in a good way that we didn't get a debris signature that was really obvious. I think there might have been something in there in terms of the debris signature, but it wasn't really obvious. I mean, you can kind of, you look here, little faint signatures here and there, but nothing like what the potential looked to have been in terms of a tornado loft and debris, but a situation here where we could have had some, wind damage for sure. Continuing to give you the latest here. Trying to keep you informed. It's all about protecting you, your friends, and your family. The time right now is 6:55 Central, 7:55 Eastern. Live here in the Weather Center with you. Again, trying to keep you informed. Definitely a nasty storm went through that Mexico Beach area. Still with you here, checking the latest details. Just based on kind of what I'm seeing here, some broad assessments. I do think there was some wind damage there in the Mexico Beach area, even if it wasn't tornadic, for the most part. I do think we had some pretty nasty damage, and we have a couple thousand folks in the dark, and it's not a hugely populated area overall. Just in the counties there, down this far, I'm talking about Gulf, and then this far down in Bay. So as we're looking and as we're tracking things, so still have quite a bit of wind though, one direction type of wind. Which that might be what we ended up having at the surface more than, you know, opposite directions, which would give you that debris signature. So we didn't really have that for the most part there. We do have some pretty strong wind though moving towards State Road 71. This is going to be moving into Franklin County here next little bit. We've, you know, given you a good bit of heads up here as you're looking down toward Franklin County. You got to watch around Krills, Carabel area, especially where some of the stronger wind looks to be. To get further up, maybe some of this is a little bit less in an environment with this high of instability, meaning some of this wind wouldn't get down to the surface, but still heavy rain. Maybe, you know, as you're seeing right now, we would hit but over toward Wilma, Sumatra, and Liberty County, Smith Creek there, South Troppy, you kind of get the idea. So, again, trying to give you guys the very latest here on what we're down with. Been with you for about an hour now. I'm meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center. I know you can watch there over on Facebook, Casey Cloud WX, Cloud Weather, Twitter /Exit Cloud Casey, YouTube at Cloud Weather there, Twitch Cloud Weather, and Cloud.com. That has all the different links available there. So, again, trying to give you guys the latest updates and all of this. I see we have now had a marginal risk added now, formally, because of what's going on down here. On Prediction Center in Norman, sending this on out. So let me go ahead, switch modes here. See that dark green there. And then this green Caravel over towards South Troppy. A tornado risk still remains. Wind risk similar area. We have a little bit of Wakulla. We have Franklin, a little bit of Liberty in this tornado risk here as we look ahead. Again, trying to get the latest. There's a lot going on, obviously. We had that flooding there in north central Florida last night, and we keep alluding to that. It was so significant, so severe, and you know, the models did not really pick up on it all that well. Flood watch did get issued yesterday afternoon, you know, as there was some potential starting to come into play, but not to the level it ended up coming into play. That is for sure down that way. As we look here, these are rainfall estimates. These gray areas, anything in gray, that one solid gray is at least 5 inches according to the radar, but some of these areas getting well over a foot, or even a foot and a half or so in terms of those estimates as we're looking and tracking things. You know, I look around my door there, some of these areas getting 15 inches according to the radar estimates here. You know, roads, you know, closed, roads with sinkholes in some areas. I mean, that'd be more isolated, and even, you know, road collapsing apparently based on some media reports. So not good down there. And, you know, Titusville, a foot or so of precip down there as well. Some big problems. Right now they're not getting the rain. There'll be some rain maybe later on in the these areas, which, you know, we need rain in some of our area because of the fire danger. Other areas, well, they don't need that rain there. That's, you know, again, some of that, a lot of that just outside the covered area, but still, as we continue to give you guys the very latest, very important to keep an eye on these situations here. And we'll keep an eye on that camera, Cape Sandblast there. Yeah, kind of looking at some of this action there. It still extends into the Gulf. Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America there. Again, kind of telling that other story. Pretty scenic look, but a stormy look. Kind of scary look too when you're looking at the clouds there. I know people trying to go to work and school when this is not the type of weather, you know, that some of these folks want to be dealing with, obviously. You know, a lot of areas okay, but not, you know, in some of these areas further toward the western fringes there. Some areas, you know, just getting in there, so at least that's good, but some areas not, you know, maybe, you know, folks not quite getting in there yet. Cooler in Georgia, warmer in Florida, more instability, more unstable in the Florida counties here as we're looking and tracking things. I'm going to try to give you guys the very latest here on what's going on, obviously. I'll go 12 hours on rainfall on here. I know it doesn't encompass everything because even though it actually does it quite a bit here with some of these brighter yellows, I mean, you have to go further back because it started before 8 o'clock yesterday. Or it's actually 12 hours from 7 o'clock, I guess, but 7 to 7. But we're going to go ahead and pull some more traffic cameras in there on that flooding in Central Florida. Let's see there, US 441 in the Lake County area. One of these camera views here. It's daylight, you know, exposing just how much of that flooding remains there. Not a good sight for sure. You're looking down there in Central Florida this morning. Looks like a tow truck trying to get through that though. I guess towing a vehicle out of even higher water maybe. Again, you never know how deep some of this is. I mean, on the right side, I'm sure it's quite a bit deeper than the left side. As we continue to give you the latest. Just checking some of the different views of all that flooding. Looks like maybe some fog there in some of those areas down there after all this rain. Hazy look there, Stateroad 46 at Round Lake Drive. As we keep on looking there. One of the cameras we showed last night, I believe, it looked like people are able to get through that area now out there in Brevard County. For the most part. We had water on this last night. I was having trouble receding. Once we get back over to the Doppler, I'm at a gust of 54 miles an hour. You know, that's at least to me, meaning that kind of wind in there. That was around the Gulf Veterans Memorial Park weather stem camera at let's see the time there, 6:43 Central Time, 7:43 Eastern. I'm sure we had some wind stronger than that in there though, after everything we saw in the velocities based on some indications of some of those power outages, you know, in toward those communities. Just trying to give you the latest on everything. Still have some broad rotation, but not like it was showing up earlier on the shear rate product. Okay, this is kind of what I'm looking for now. We did have an official damaging gust there at 6:29 Central, 7:29 Eastern there at Mexico Beach, 16th there, MB, Mexico Beach ambient stays and gusted to 58 miles an hour. So we did have an official gust there. 2 severe limits, and you know, those sometimes I mean, you know, it might not even be up that high. I don't really know about that one in particular. I mean, it's possible if you had, you know, an anemometer that was up there like what you have in an airport. Sometimes those are up a little bit higher, and you could even had a gust that would have shown up even stronger there. So that's impressive for one of those type of sites. Indicative of some damaging conditions there on Mexico Beach for sure. I still have a little bit of a notch here. This is, you know, still kind of interesting looking as it's taking its time, but it's not going to be too long before it, approaches Franklin County at least. This could still tighten back up, but not impossible. Kind of see a little bit of a spin even with that movement there. It's kind of interesting. Very unique pattern here. We've hit some erratic movement with this. We were watching when it was offshore earlier on. Definitely kind of some of those latest frames. Earlier on, it was kind of going more southeast. And it hit it more due east there, and now it's kind of got back to being southeast again now. With some of this, that could end up helping us, get this out of the picture a little bit quicker. You heard that beep there. That's a new severe thunderstorm warning with a tornado possible tag. But you'll see the box here in a second. But if it kind of goes further over toward the Gulf, then we can get, the Gulf of America there, and also some folks, based on what it used to be called there, the Gulf of Mexico. As it gets closer to water, that zone there is something here where the quicker it's over the water, the quicker it's not that threat to land. We can wrap it covered up so we don't get some flash flood warnings here locally, and we'll have to just watch for maybe convection later on. Very uncertain forecast based on again what happened yesterday because of the pressure differences there per se between Melissa and a high pressure to the north. We have a front involved and multiple fronts. There's a lot going on here meteorologically, and some of that the models weren't picking up on yesterday. I can just tell you. Right now, that's why we had all that rain down there that was amplified, and the pattern was, and they had just so many big problems there in Central Florida. But Franklin Gulf Liberty now to 9:45 Eastern, 8:45 Central with a severe thunderstorm warning. Now that we're starting to really get this into a covered area, let me pull our clock back up. I had it off because I didn't want to confuse folks that we're watching maybe, outside of our covered area in the central time zone, but now that we're getting this, closer there, closer in toward, that eastern time zone now is 8:09 Eastern, 7:09 Central, but 8:09 Eastern, there you go in the corner. And we have this severe thunderstorm warning now, concern escalating further in toward Liberty now. Southern Liberty, much of Franklin. 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts possible, but then a tornado is also possible. Not enough for a tornado warning, though, at this point. But East Point, Apalachicola, Port St. Joe, Mexico Beach, White City, Weehawken, Franklin, Honeyville, 11 Mile, Odina, Cape San Blas, Indian Pass, Beverly, Bay City, Willis Landing, Apalachicola Airport, Simmons Bayou, Hayes Place, Dow, Keith, and Fort Gadsden under this until 9:45 Eastern here. So, and that warning kind of takes a little more easterly. Again, it's been erratic, so it's, definitely can air that way. Be on the side of caution because this could end up going, more easterly here. And if it doesn't, well, that's, you have folks protected, just in case. A little bit of something popping up here with the shear marker out ahead. I wasn't necessarily noticing that before. Don't kind of watch that. We'll see. But the interaction could cause something too. As we're looking at as we're tracking things. Again, this is till 9:45, so a long fused warning. We do have some unfortunate news though out of the Mexico Beach area. Oh boy, this is what I always worry about RV parks and the like. Especially and it being early in the morning. Maybe some folks are up and don't got no warning there. But we're getting a report now from emergency management there 1 mile southeast of Mexico Beach. Where there's a tornado or just thunderstorm wind that didn't necessarily, take, a powerful tornado, as we didn't have that with the, modifying debris signature. That didn't happen like we thought it might, but it didn't take that to cause big problems. And we do have a report now of trailers, meaning more than one, and RVs, more than one, overturned in an RV park there 1 mile southeast of Mexico Beach. Happened around 6:30 Central, 7:30 Eastern this morning. So, it doesn't take a lot here to be very problematic. I worry about that for, this is just that side of our area, Bay and Gulf. I worry about that for like Bradford County, for instance. We have an RV park here. It's always got to be, weather aware in these type of instances as we go ahead. And we don't know if there's any injuries yet. I'll go ahead and try to effort that there. Let me see if there's any more reporting. They don't have anything with that yet. They didn't put that out. They might still be assessing things. I don't really know. Hopefully there's not. Hopefully folks are okay. But that's very concerning there. Very concerning out of Bay County. Let me go ahead and see here if I can find some more reporting on that. Again, this is where we jumped in. It's a very, volatile situation. Even if it wasn't a strong tornado, it could have still been something that was very significant. Very significant for viewers out there. Again, that's really concerning, that report there out of Mexico Beach. Again, emergency management reporting trailers and RVs overturned at an RV park there. So whether it's a tornado or not, people's lives being impacted somehow, assuming there were people in them, which I would think there would be. But, can't confirm that at this point in time. That was around 6:25, 6:30 Central Time, 7:30 Eastern there in Southern Bay County. Again, an RV park. Trailers and RVs overturned there. We don't have any reports yet, one way or the other, if there's any injuries or something worse, if there are any fatalities, we don't know at this point. We hope there weren't. We hope folks were able to get a safe spot. There was a fairly good lead time on that warning. I mean, we jumped in, not even in our area, we jumped in about a half hour before that came across, and that warning was out, 35, 40 minutes ahead. We had a severe thunderstorm. We had marine warnings even further out. I mean, there was a lot of heads up for this, for something, I mean, it was early in the day, so it wasn't a tornado watch. If people weren't up, they just weren't up. But if people were watching, well, then they should have been able to get that tornado safe spot. So, again, and that's what whether it was a tornado or not, that's would be your best, spot there. You'd want to get in, hopefully there's these places that are designated, tornado safe areas here where people can evacuate to. So, again, I just continue to give you the latest here. That's pretty sobering information. We hope there's no injuries, but we don't know at this point in time. So, again, around the community of White City there in Gulf County right now, we do have some wind enhancement, though. And this is going to be moving in toward Franklin. Again, it's taking its time, but it's going to be doing that soon. We do have that plotted on the map now, it seems, of where that RV park is there. So it's right along the water. I mean, you see this in our covered area, too. I mean, I've been out there, and you see some of these RV parks in the coastal zones, and, you can have stuff like that be a threat there, too. It's just always important, just make sure, if you have a, place like that, make sure if you're at one of those places, enjoy things, but then when the weather takes that turn, make sure you have that emergency plan that you can, practice. Make sure you can get to that tornado safe spot in a well-built structure, a sturdy building there, folks. It's a scenario here where you want to make sure that you're taking things very seriously. RVs, mobile homes, and the like, that wind can get up under them there. And then, once that happens, I mean, it's with garages too, and a site-built home, but, that wind, it takes a little more maybe sometimes for that. But once that starts to happen, especially the mobile homes, RVs, trailers, there was trailers too overturned. So then, when I see the word trailer, at first I'm thinking, oh, maybe they're thinking about, different kind of trailer. But now that I'm thinking about an RV park, it's probably mobile homes and what they're talking about that were overturned there. So, just, not a good situation here in this type of setup. So, very, scary. Very scary for sure. Again, trying to give you guys the very latest here. We're still with you here. It is 8:16 Eastern Time right now on this Monday morning, 7:16 Central. I'm meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center. We have a lot of wind in here, not that much rotation of what we had earlier on. Let's go ahead and see a rotation tracker. We've had some erratic movement with this, and you know what, let me just say I'll put rotation tracker into motion, which we'll kind of see the different twists and turns we've had with this here this morning. It's taking a moment. I don't normally run it like this, so it's going to take a second here. You know, we talked about being offshore Mexico Beach earlier on. We thought it was going to go a little south. Instead, it took that dive more in. You know, technically it was 1 mile southeast, I guess, where we had worst of the damage. But still, you kind of get the idea there. Right on that line, really. But yeah, we cover Franklin. We don't cover Gulf and Bay there. So we focus. We want to make sure when we put stuff out, we take a better area too. It's a little bit tricky with all that, but okay, we do have this loop ready here. If you kind of followed it was going, you could see, if you really look close, you could see how it's kind of going east southeast there with some of this, if you know what you're looking for, and then it kind of went back and east northeast and then east. So kind of tricky with these erratic movements sometimes, for sure, with this kind of spin, with this kind of intense storm. So again, a tricky thing here this morning. Again, still with you here. Just look at some of the latest information as it streams on in. Again, the biggest story by far right now, you know, from this storm here, and I know we've had a flood in Central Florida, but in the Mexico Beach area, about 6:30 this morning, Central Time, trailers and RVs overturned at an RV park. We don't have any word on injuries one way or the other at this point. This is the reporting coming in from the Weather Service in Tallahassee. Yeah, that's via them. They got it, you know, from emergency management in the area. So again, we're just continuing to give you guys the very latest here. Just trying to give you the very latest, obviously. Trying to keep you safe and informed. Just trying to check some more information. Just checking some other sources here. Maybe some spin trying to come together a little bit more here, maybe. Around the White City area. We'll have to watch it. Let me kind of back this up here. Yeah, some of those reds, I mean, it could be the angle too, but some of those reds look a little brighter. If these start getting tight again, maybe a tornado warning and/or parts of Franklin here, folks. So this same area we've been watching for so long that caused the damage there at that RV park in the Mexico Beach area. Again, trailers and RVs overturned there. So it's always important, you know, to evacuate if you can. Mobile homes, RVs, and the like when there's a tornadic situation. You want to get to a site, build structure, an interior room away from windows. You know, so very serious stuff when you have a tornado, or just, you know, very strong straight line winds. Even could have been that here, you know, go through an RV park. That is very, very concerning, obviously. So I see AJ watching there on YouTube from Tallahassee. I appreciate you tuning in here as we give you guys the very latest on what's happening. Right now, Tallahassee, they're in a situation where there's just some lighter rain up that way. I know the temperatures, let's check those. They're, you know, still up there enough where we could get a stronger storm up there. A little bit lower chance that green is what we're expecting. The biggest concern, but again, there's some uncertainty in the forecasts I've alluded to here today. You see the instability here It does cut off though once you get to Tallahassee a pretty good margin with the surface-based cape. You know, in the Franklin County here, we have some of these values close to 1,000 or more right at the coast. Around McCulloch County, 600, Crawfordville or St. Mark's area there. And then Tallahassee, though, we're down to 300. So that's about half the level of energy you get that rain. I think it'd be hard, you know, Tallahassee north to get a severe threat here with the way the rain's coming in like that. Let's see if we get a, you know, some flooding, ponding of water on roadways there. You know, again, it's been iffy with the models. We do need to rain, though, in these areas badly. So this can, like last week, it was more of a good thing than what we've had with this pattern, which has been some bad mixed in more, you know, in the fringes or just outside of our area mainly. But, you know, some pretty bad. I mean, you know, 18 inches of rain there in Lake County, give or take, yesterday. 12 inches or so in Brevard County. And then a damaging weather scenario, whether it was a tornado, straight line winds. We're not sure exactly. Could have been both. Really a mixture of that at Mexico Beach causing damage at an RV park there. Trailers and RVs overturned there, so that is not good. Again, that was over here around Mexico Beach. So you got hit so hard by Hurricane Michael, obviously, in 2018. They've done, you know, well rebuilding there, but, and this isn't anything like Michael, don't get me wrong, but still, it's not, you know, a step in the right direction. It's a step in the wrong direction, obviously, for those folks as we're looking and as we're tracking things here. We turned the logo red because we saw the potential. You know, we saw that potential, so just wanted folks to be, you know, mindful here of the concern we could have some damage and conditions here. You know, just always got to be mindful, got to be cognizant here. I know. Let me see a little bit. I have a couple pictures. I actually did go to Mexico Beach there after Michael, a couple months after, and this is, I don't have any pictures of what just happened, but this is after Michael in 2018. I'm about to show you there on our graphics source. You know, some of the damage that was caused, obviously. You know, total devastation. And then look at the next picture here as well. So that kind of tells the story. This is the Mexico Beach area there. The devastation after Michael, 2 months after. So it's a beautiful day, but the damage still remained at that point. A lot of cleanup since then has taken place. You know, and obviously, you know, things like RV park in that area there. And, you know, apparently some major damage there. It's not like a hurricane that's set up this morning. It's not like you have days or so to prepare. You know, there wasn't much time to prepare for this. There was a little, though. We had about a half-hour warning, and it wasn't even in our covered area. We were on for about a half hour before this hit. This very volatile storm, supercell, with those tornadic producing when it's over land. You know, can't guarantee it one way or the other, but again, we were very concerned, you know, for good reason, unfortunately. So. Again, still giving you guys the very latest here. Seeing some rotation here. Let's get into Franklin. Some of these areas are pretty rural out here, thankfully. But we could see another red box pop up on our map, and that would get into our covered area officially with this. So we gotta be very mindful of this here this morning. To try to keep you, your friends, and your family safe and informed. I've been on here trying to keep everybody up to date here for a while because it's such a, you know, serious situation and that concern that we had. Again, just checking some different sources here. We're still on right now. I do see that rotation. It seems to be wanting to tighten up a little. Just checking correlation coefficient to make sure nothing crazy is going on here at the moment. Maybe a little bit of hail in here on this fringe. I'm really excited about that this morning. Could be upwards about 3/4 of an inch in diameter. Again, watching this, putting this into motion here. And we started to see some, interactions here too. That storm from the south interacting. And that can sometimes cause things to spin up quickly here. Have to watch for that. I don't necessarily see that that's, been the case for sure, but we had that very volatile signature earlier on. This is kind of moving in the direction of Krills there in Franklin County. Again, trying to give you guys the latest here. Jump into some of the other maps here. Some of these areas picking up a few inches of rain, moving into our covered area here. And in Georgia, look how cool it is around Atlanta this morning. Upper 40s in some of those spots there. Some cool air for sure up there. You're not going to get severe weather up there, I wouldn't think. Knoxville in the 40s. I know we had a crazy tornado earlier this year, I think it was, that kind of popped up out of nowhere way further up than it, what I thought. But we're really not expecting that here today. Up there, we have this screen area here. That's where the tornado risk is. They added that a little while ago for the after 8 a.m. Eastern. You see some rotation to west of Krills. Let's see if we get another tornado warning. It didn't show up as well though on the actual storm relative. Looks like something in there. Is that just the inflow? Yeah. The inflow there. That blue is indicative of inflow here. So this is a powerful supercell still, even if it's not a tornado producer necessarily. So just gonna check some more information here. Just trying to verify some stuff. Bear with me here. We're live here trying to keep you guys safe and informed with everything that's going on. Okay, so a couple things with schools. I want to update you guys on Lake County in Florida. There was a thought maybe some of those schools would be closed. Well, Lake County schools, that flooding there is what the thought was that maybe they'd be closed. Well, they experienced little or no damage, even though some areas did experience some big problems. So they are open today. The schools are open, but safety-related school, absences there for the students are excused. Now, as we look toward Gulf County, though, all schools have been closed because of what was just happening here in the last little bit. I know, it's a tricky thing here, happening rapidly there in Gulf and Lake County. Well, you gotta wonder, hopefully the roads, I'm sure in some areas they weren't passable with sinkholes and the like, some areas I'm sure folks were able to get there. You saw that on camera how nasty things were with all that, flood of waters there. So that's kind of concerning that it hadn't receded and folks were having to be sent to school there potentially, but absences, because of the storm would be, excused. But as we go ahead and continue to give you the latest here, trying to give you guys the very latest on what's happening. 33 this morning. I've been with you for a while because overall pattern. So active with Melissa to the south, high pressure, that squeeze play. We have a front, one front, we have another front. It's a mess here, folks. So, not good. Even though a lot of areas are staying dry, some areas, we had St. John, some getting 5 inches, but those areas, those were able to handle it, they weren't, St. Augustine really is what I'm saying. But some areas downstate getting, 18 inches just south of the covered area. I know the rotational look at things, we have something out ahead here a little. That's worth noting. It's just starting to get into Franklin some more now. That feels like a pretty nasty hail signature. Yeah, I think there has some hail coming in there. Gonna be crossing over State Road 65 here soon. That may be up to an inch in diameter. I mean, our signal here on our other radar is about an inch. Let me pull that on in here. Bear with me. Trying to make it a little less confusing because it's showing some of it from earlier. But yeah, just west of Krill, they've hailed about an inch in diameter here. As we're tracking things, as we're monitoring things here this morning. We're in Stark at 69 degrees over here on our thermometer, 70 in, the county on another thermometer at the Keystone Airport. And people that don't know, Keystone Airport actually is in Bradford. But as we go ahead and look here, we have some rotation on northwest Apalachicola. So again, though, a lot of the areas staying okay right now, staying clear, as we're looking, as we're tracking things. But some of the area, not so much, as we're looking at things out toward those, counties of Franklin and Liberty primarily. So we cover 62 counties. A lot of the counties looking okay, just some passing showers, but that area there, Franklin and Liberty, southern Liberty is what we're really talking about, and then Franklin, since we have some problematic weather this morning that's already been damaging. Again, the RV park there in the Mexico Beach area, trailers and RVs overturned apparently according to emergency management. And then down there, central Florida, all that flooding, with reports of sinkholes and, road collapse situation even. Talking about Brevard and Lake Roy there in those counties, but the way things set up. But again, we continue to give you the latest here. Sticking with this morning goes all the way to 9:45. I know we generally don't stay on forever and ever, but it's not a tornado warning. The storm here, I just feel like it could produce a tornado at any moment here, so we have to just be very mindful. When I say any moment, I don't mean like right this second. What I mean is like the next scan, it could be capable of producing, and then you get the red box. So as we watch here west of Krill, so again, we have this rotation, this severe thunderstorm warning in effect here on 9:45. We have this warning including East Point, Apalachicola, Port St. Joe, Mexico Beach, White City, Weehawken, Franklin, Honeyville, 11 Mile, Odina, Cape San Blas, Indian Pass, as well as Beverly, Bay City, Willis Landing, Apalachicola Airport, Simmons Bayou, Hayes Place, Dalkeith, and Fort Gadsden. Again, when we started this, we had a potential for a strong tornado with this that was coming on shore. Ooh, we got a little area down here now we got to watch. There's some spin to the south that is headed close for Apalachicola there, maybe. So we'll have to watch see how that interacts eventually. We do have a Cape Sandblast camera, so let's go ahead and pull that up. Florida 5-1 perspective. Go ahead and pull that in here again. Bear with me here. Just a one-man band. They are updating this here. The warning of 9:45, still that tornado possible tag. But let me go ahead and pull this camera on in now. We're getting some rain there in the Cape Sandblast area. Trying to see these volatile conditions here. The reduced visibility, obviously. So we're looking out that way. As we continue to give you the latest there. Some accent in the water there. As we got the update on the warning. Let me go ahead and read that off at 8:36 Eastern, 7:36 Central. Severe thunderstorms are located along a line extending from 12 miles southeast of Weewahitska to 7 miles southeast of White City to 24 miles southwest of Port St. Joe. Moving east at 20 miles an hour. 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts and quarter-size hail. Possibility there, East Point, Apalachicola, Port St. Joe, Mexico Beach, White City, Weewahitska, Franklin, Honeyville, 11-mile, Odina, Cape Sandblast, Indian Pass, Beverly, Bay City, Willis Landing, Apalachicola Airport, Simmons Bayou, Hayes Place, Dalkeith, and Fort Gadsden. But remain alert for a possible tornado, even if there's a severe thunderstorm warning right now. Tornadoes can develop quickly from severe thunderstorms. If you spot a tornado, go out once into that small central room in a sturdy and really well-built, site type of structure there. Built on site, so not, a mobile home or RV or something like that. So, again, we watched that there. We, look at everything that happened with that flooding last night. Central Florida, let me pull up those estimates again. All those terrible downpours there with all that flooding. Some of that downstate too, not to the degree as Lake and Brevard, but we had some issues there, Palm Beach and Broward to a lesser degree there as well. As we go ahead and keep looking at things, of course, Melissa, the Cat 5 hurricane. That's a terrible story. It has an influence on this, even though it's way away. It's not direct, but the overall pressure pattern playing a role with enhancing some of this. We'll go ahead and take off here. It's a bit thunderstorm precautions and take it down there toward Jamaica. We have just a terrible, terrible Cat 5. That's what got upgraded at 5 a.m. this morning. The Cat 5, a terrible Cat 5, moving toward Jamaica. The surge is going to be catastrophic. It would seem the flash flooding, catastrophic landslides. Talking about mudslides, that catastrophic potential there. The extreme winds is not a good set of circumstances at all here as we're looking at as we're tracking things. So, just not good any way you slice it there. Put the radar back on, go back to the north. Here we have a special marine warning getting issued further on out. Eventually this will be kind of, getting a little bit closer there, toward the water eventually in terms of the bulk of the line. We have some accent already in the picture there coming up, for now from the water too. Some different movements here with this, obviously, as we keep you safe and informed. And that's moving right now on this. I'm loading the frames in, but a little more easterly. I know we've switched some radars around, so let's move a little more easterly though right now. If that is on the Tallahassee radar right now, it's a little closer in here. We have this area tied up a spin to the south of Franklin County in St. George Island, so we'll have to watch that. Just trying to keep you guys up to date here. $8:42 is the time. Been on for a while here. It's about protecting you, your friends, and your family. Again, I loop it and we'll go ahead and pause it. Let me switch to the other radar here. I'll load those frames on in. Look at velocity first. See some of that heavier rain there, maybe some hail potential, trying to edge closer toward the Sumatra community. As we look and track here. Cruels though with some spin a little bit on the earlier frame. There was some inflow of that blue there, not debris, but let me check some more power added numbers here. Looking like 2,533 customers in the dark there in that Gulf to Bay County area. And the Mexico Beach area especially. That's what we're talking. Right here we had the RV park with that damage. Trailers and RVs overturned there. According to emergency management, no word if there's any injuries or not, but again, trying to give you guys the very latest here on this. Watching some of that wind here, that wind history. See some spin down here to the south. I don't have to watch this one. That isn't storm relative, and that does have a hook, so that could end up giving us a tornado warning here on the southern plain because that is moving northeast. You know, it's around St. George Island, give or take. Just have to be very mindful of that. There's, you know, in the weather community, a weather stem camera, I believe, on St. George Island Bridge. We can't see that here on the air, but my point is we could get a wind reading here. I know we had that during Michael. We were looking at that back in 2018. This is nothing like Michael, but still volatile for a few isolated communities here this morning. Okay, that spin, that latest scan dropped off some. Quite a bit, really. I mean, we're going to continue to watch. That's about 6,000 feet up off the Eglin radar. Let me check the Tallahassee view, see if that's any closer, because the closer you get, the lower down, you get a better view. That's about 7,000. It says it worse, so it may not be quite as bad then, but it's hard to say. That's both pretty high up views. Again, trying to keep you safe here. We're live at 8:46 on this Monday morning. Again, still with you at the coverage. Looking at rotation tracker here. That's still in weaker right now. We have this severe thunderstorm warning going for another hour for this area. It does include Apalachicola here in Franklin County. You have the Krills area here right around Steroid 65 being impacted right now with some pretty strong winds. Not the type of signature we had earlier, which was just jumping off the, you know, map at us there with, I mean, we literally had in the Gulf, you know, over the water, we literally had a gate-to-gate signature of winds to 150. 150 miles an hour, which got us so concerned. So some weakening, and we didn't get an overwhelming debris signature, maybe a little something, but there was quite a bit of damage around Mexico Beach, including severe winds and a area there at an RV park where trailers and RVs were overturned. Don't have any word on whether there were any injuries yet, but we're working to get that information. So again, this is a one-man band here though, but again, just trying to keep you guys safe and informed here. Let me see if I can effort some of that information here for you guys at home. I'm gonna check here. I'm trying to keep you guys up to date. It's all about keeping you informed here. Northwest of Krills there. We have some indications of some weak rotation, so we have to watch this. We gotta watch this carefully. We have this hook down here, south of Apalachicola. It's gotta be watched carefully, moving up towards St. George Island here. We're into the severe thunderstorm warning in that vicinity. We're looking as we track things here. Just trying to give you the updates. Let me check here something. I want to take the population density. This part of the area there, not as populated. If it meanders further this way, well, that's where you have the population. St. George Island Bridge and the like. So let's just kind of watch this because there's, that looks like it's meandering a little east. So we'll have to watch that a little more carefully in that regard. But if it's going over a less populated area, we wouldn't be as concerned. But we'll have to watch since that is kind of trying to maybe meander a little bit more toward the population there. So again, let's just go ahead and keep tracking this here. You see that hook. You see that rotation. And then you have the population further over. Some of that's kind of trying to get up there, maybe to around there. But then it could kind of get up in here on East Point maybe later on based on that trajectory. We shall see. But we're going to have some mergers going on with the main complex and this isolated supercell ahead. A lot of instability down in there, over 2,500 joules per kilogram right there with supercell composite over 3 and the significant tornado parameter at 3/4 there. So that's pretty nasty. As you get further inland, you don't have anything like that. I mean, in terms of some of the other parameters, I mean, you have the instability's a lot less. A little bit more on Star Jackson. We'll have to watch that for later today with some development triggers in the atmosphere and the like. You have some supercell composite, but the STP, is more limited here. That's 3/4, but around here it's about half that. So I'm surprised there's even that much. So it's a little bit of a concern, honestly. I'm a little surprised we're actually seeing that on here at a headlight, as that could end up if we get some development. That's a little bit higher than what I would have thought, quite honestly, to see on that even. So we'll have to watch here in North Central Florida. It might be this afternoon even. If we start getting some storms by themselves to develop, there may be enough parameters here to get some, rotation and maybe even a rogue warning here, severe thunderstorm warning, or, some type of storm that looks like a severe, storm. In terms of maybe wind and maybe even rotation, not quite enough for a tornado warning, but maybe that supercellular structure. So we'll have to just wait and see here as we're looking and as we're tracking things. Again, it's about keeping everybody safe and informed here in the Weather Center. If you're just joining me, there's been a lot happening. We had the damage off in Gulf County. We had the flooding, road damage in Central Florida. Some areas there are getting a foot to 18 inches of rain. Lake and Brevard counties are really the story. And of course, Melissa even though it's not directly connected with the tropical moisture by any stretch, the influence is there actually, because you have a high pressure, a low pressure, you have different boundaries. You have this kind of pattern here at the squeeze play with a Cat 5. It did get upgraded earlier this morning to a Cat 5, and it's headed toward Jamaica, and it's going to cause total devastation there, like, you know, just unfathomable, way worse even than Gilbert, which was that summer record there in '88. It's going to be way worse than that, it seems, for those folks. Are just a tragedy headed toward Jamaica there. I mean, they're already getting into some of the, outer bands. I mean, we don't have radar on this, so you can't tell that, but it's just going to get worse and worse and worse there for those people. Just an awful set of circumstances there. Let me take off our local information, but you get the idea here with the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale here. I know we're just going to continue to be mindful here of what we're dealing with. I know we're talking about a situation here where we're going to have catastrophic damage, unfortunately, for those folks down there in Jamaica. Again, just not good at all. Just not a good thing for those folks down there. You think about just all the different types of damage that could be experienced down there, and it's just not going to be good there in that island nation as we're looking ahead in the timeline, as we continue to watch all of that. I'm going to take that off the screen for now, though. And you see the map there with the look, and let me just see this. I mean, look at that. This looks like a textbook there. And meteorology, a textbook here. Meteorology of what's headed toward Jamaica, as well defined as it ever gets here. And it's this awful, feet of rain there headed toward Jamaica as we look ahead in toward the timeline. Just so much moisture there. And it's just not going to be a good thing. As we go ahead and go back to the north here. Look at our area. We do have that rotation north of Krill starting to intensify a little bit. Let's see if that gets the tornado warning or not. Like I did earlier on. So that red trying to mix in there a little bit brighter. If that gets as much brighter, that probably is you. That's on a notch there. Talking about it with this if it's in Tallahassee. So just have to watch that very carefully, obviously. Be very mindful of what we're dealing with. Oh, that looks tighter. That may get a tornado warning here, folks. We'll see. That is off the Eglin. I'm checking some things here. Let me check the Tallahassee radar. It doesn't show it as tight. That's only at 3,500 feet. This here higher. So they'll be probably deferring to Tallahassee's radar. And if that's the case, then that's not quite enough for a tornado warning, probably. And toward Franklin. Just checking some of the different metrics here. But definitely some rotation. This has rotation. That hook is well defined. The velocity doesn't show it as well as, it could here, which is good. See if we have anything from that Cape Sandblast camera. Depends on which way it's looking, really, but we'll try to pull that up again. The Florida 5-1 perspective. Still looking off toward the west, so it's not going to be looking into this necessarily, but still some of the nasty weather here this morning. From that Florida 5-1 perspective. We see some stronger wind here. This could be damaging whether there's a tornado or not. West of Krills in parts of our area there in Franklin County. It's very rural though. A lot of trees. It means, a lot of trees actually would mean if you had like a tornado down, it'd be really easy to see on the debris tracker. But not a lot of, damage in terms of people's, houses. As we keep watching and keep tracking. Gonna check some more information here. Different things coming up. Looks like we just had an earthquake there down toward the Caribbean. Sometimes it may not be a exact teleconnection, or there may be. It just seems like when you have some of these hurricanes, sometimes we end up having we have some of these earthquakes. We just had a pretty notable one there. This is really off, you know, what we were just talking about here. It just happened. It popped up as an alert on my source here, so it just was letting me know about, you know, the tsunami statement. I'm just gonna double check this. I don't think we have anything in the continental U.S. with this stuff, but it just popped up here. I know it's a lot of different things I've been talking about. So at least the Atlantic and Gulf Coast were not expecting a tsunami at this point. So that's good. 6.8 earthquake at Leeward Islands about 20 minutes ago. Another source is showing 6.5, but let me go ahead and switch sources here. The USGS map. We don't normally have to go to this on the flyer, but it's been that kind of pattern here lately. All these different things coming together. So yeah, we're gonna flip over to this. So yeah, this is way, you know, kind of different topic, but you know, we have our hurricane out in here moving toward Jamaica, but we had this earthquake just reported, a 6.5 on this, a 6.8 magnitude. It showed up on the statement saying that not a tsunami threat for the continental U.S. or the Gulf Coast. I don't know about Puerto Rico quite yet. I'll have to effort that. I didn't see anything right off, but it's just happened, you know, 20 minutes ago, this earthquake. Kind of probably a little low for that, but that, you know, near the Leeward Islands airport, just coming on in there, that earthquake. So just happening there. Don't generally even get statements that often, having to roll it out for the Atlantic there coast and the Gulf Coast. So. Just trying to give you updates here. Switching back to our local weather right now. Don't see anything, you know, regarding a tsunami yet on any sources. So, you know, other than just to roll it out there for the Gulf Coast and the Atlantic coast of the U.S. But back to this we go. We have this severe thunderstorm warning to 9:45 here for portions of Franklin and Liberty counties. So again, we're watching this. The latest update here indicated 60-mile-an-hour wind gust and quarter-size hail possible, and a tornado can't be completely ruled out here either. So we have to just remain on guard here north of Creels. As you see some brighter pinks there on the map indicating some stronger winds. Not seeing much of the green with the, you know, twisting there. You know, north of Apalachicola, a little something on that notch, but not overwhelming. This here, a little bit tighter. We've got hook there, headed towards St. George Island, give or take. We'll have to watch that carefully. Eventually, some of this will kind of push out, though, a little bit more. When you see it's not really about Liberty County anymore with severe. So that's good. You kind of see some of this going more east. Eventually, it's just the geography will kind of get us out of, you know, Franklin, and then maybe more over to Gulf, and then it may not really hold together based on what the models have shown, which they may not be, you know, as we saw yesterday, Central Florida with the flooding, you know, not really showing up in those. It may not be, you know, on target 100%, but Taylor, Dixie, and Lee, we'll have to watch to see if we get some of this, you know, anything severe over there later, but it'll be a lull, probably, of a couple hours where we didn't have any warning. Maybe, you know, we don't end up having any more after this, you know, sequence here in this zone with maybe just one more to get us off the coast with a severe thunderstorm warning. That's possible, too, but we shall see, so. Again, north of Creels. Watch a little bit of something in there. That latest scan on debris tracker shows something. It might just be the wind in there. I don't think that's anything overwhelming. It's just, you know, different angles show different things sometimes. Didn't really think that I'd tell you something tightening, but I'll check a different view on here. I'm going to check our Let's check the Tallahassee on another source. I mean, we have some rotation on that. Well, there may still be enough rotation with this to be mindful that we could end up getting a tornado warning out toward Carabel here. So, we mentioned you guys earlier on some. You see this wind here. And that's showing 160 plus there. And that picked up some. It's erratic. I mean, you see how it's kind of that erratic movement here. On a different source to try to show stuff, but they put Carabel in the frame there. You kind of see how it was going a little east-northeast, and then it kind of went more east there. So, somewhere in that vicinity, maybe just north, we'll see. But it could, you know, definitely sift around on us a little bit. So, that definitely could be some damage and wind that could knock down a tree or a power line, something like that there, and a tree on a road. And there's not that many roads out in that part of the county there, but it's not out of the question. So, again, you have to be very mindful of what we're dealing with. In toward Franklin County this morning with a severe thunderstorm warning. Switch back on over to another source. This is what we generally are showing you guys more often. We have this down here we're watching. Now some of that, the way this kind of angles out here, the merger with that, you know, it could happen a little bit further east. We'll see. We'll have to see exactly how, you know, based on these angles, it's very tricky, but this is over land. We know this is impacting, you know, land areas. Don't know if there's any people out here, though, in toward Franklin, in that part of Franklin County, but there are people out toward Carabel, and we have to be very mindful of that. Lanark Village there, and the likes. So have to be, you know, ready to get inside away from windows. Be ready to take your tornado precautions at least. We had, you know, so strong a rotation earlier on. It's not really strong now, but we still could get a quick tornado touchdown in here. Not out of the question. Saw a little something in here, but it was not in the right spot, by the way. That's displaced. That's, you know, something like what you look for, but it's not in the proper spot to be a tornado producer, it doesn't seem. But again, we're still watching. We're still tracking here this morning. This volatile weather coming on through. Trying to keep you up to date here, give you the latest. Not something I can show you guys on the air, but if you go to my Twitter account at CloudKCM, here in about 2 seconds, going to retweet something over there of the damage photos of the RV park there in Mexico Beach. So I just retweeted that, so you can check that out there, but it's not something I'm authorized to show in the air. But that's from Dave Spann. He got those photos, obtained those, and posted that. And I just retweeted that on my Twitter account at CloudKC. You can look at that over there on social media. Decent damage there. Hopefully there's no injuries. I don't know. Could have been a tornado. Could have been the winds. But yeah, go over to Twitter/@CloudKC. I just put that out over there if you guys are wondering. So that gives you a little bit more of a visual on what's going on. So as we continue along here with the coverage, you can see here north of Krills, you have that wind enhancement. Let's call it that right now. Trying to keep you guys up to date. Moving over toward the Carabel area next little bit. Just don't want to drop covered because with the history of this, with this volatile pattern, things can change rapidly. Sometimes we would drop coverage over here. This is a good thunderstorm morning. It's not the most populated area, but those winds there are getting higher. I don't trust this pattern with this now being in our area. We've had stuff on the fringes that have been, escalating, overachieving here quite a bit, especially in Central Florida yesterday. I just don't, with the pressure pattern, I don't think the models are picking up on things right. We want to just make sure we're with you guys here. This is so now went to 70 on our velocity product. I'm actually 75 now all of a sudden north of Krills there. And this could head toward the Caravel area here over the next little bit. So, again, trying to give you guys the very latest on exactly what's happening. Trying to keep you safe and informed. There's some bright yellows there, indicative of some stronger winds. You need to be inside and away from windows. Maybe even just treat this like a tornado situation. You don't want to be in an RV, or a mobile home here if you can help it around Caravel. I would say I'd go ahead and give them my, after what happened in Mexico Beach. If I'm in Caravel, if I'm in that area, I get to that site-built structure. I get to that tornado-safe spot that you have set aside here for these type of instances if you are in an RV or a mobile home there on Caravel, give or take. Because this could turn into a tornado. If not, it could be gusts to 75 miles an hour based on what we're currently seeing on the velocity. And this already has a history of going over RVs and mobile homes. That's concerning, obviously. Once we go ahead and see that escalation on this mode now, I'll go ahead and query this at 76 miles an hour worth of wind. I know it's very rural, but it's not going to be there forever. As we're looking over toward the Caravel area. Not going to be over there forever. It's going to move into the more populated zones. I mean, not the overwhelmingly most ever, but still moving that way, as you see on the loop here of the Doppler radar technology this morning. So, again, trying to keep you up to date. Definitely some strong winds here. Jumping over to some other modes. I know warning goes for 35 minutes. I'm sure they're going to, Caravel need to get added to a warning, whether it's a severe or tornado warning. We don't know yet, but hail is up to an inch, by the way, on this here, officially. We'll tell you about that potential earlier on, though, but moving east at 20, so Caravel is 16 miles, away, meaning some of the worst of this may get offshore here within the hour then. So by 10 a.m. Eastern, maybe we'll get this offshore and be able to wrap coverage. We may not be able to wrap coverage without this being a tornado warning storm, though, first. At least, escalating the winds to maybe 70, I would say, that's what I would do, probably, to go ahead and change it to 70 in the statement and keep the tornado possible tag based on what I'm seeing right now behind the scenes of velocity. But they may go tornado warning on this. It wouldn't be, out of the realm of possibility. So, as we look toward the bottom here, we have that other storm that'll be kind of trying to merge in, but it may do so closer to the coast here as this complex kind of races off. Let's say races. I mean, it's not been really racing, but when it kind of merges into it, it'll kind of look like it's racing off. So, as we look toward Caravel, though, you can see, and Krills, so especially, let's talk about them. Again, trying to give you guys the very latest on exactly what's going on here this morning. You see here some of these brighter yellows, indicative here of some winds to about 60 at least, but looking through the mode, you saw the other velocity, so on over 70 on the queries as well. Again, we're looking here in the north parts of Franklin County. So, again, trying to keep you up to date here. Been with you a while. I'm sticking with this to keep you guys informed. So important to stay on top of these volatile situations here, folks. It's all about protecting you. It's all about protecting your friends. It's all about protecting your family here. Just trying to go through all the details. trying to get to all the details here, obviously. I know we have a viewer there on YouTube watching Nicole. She wants to know about Pelham, Georgia, in that area. Let me just check our maps to see. I know this is not headed down their way, but let's go ahead and kind of we'll start to look at South Georgia there, obviously. You know, and as we look up toward Pelham, even though we are concerned, you know, about areas here toward the south, we turn the logo red for them. Pelham, it's just light rain right now. I'd be really surprised if we get severe threat. Maybe some heavier downpours in there at times, or a rogue lightning strike, but I really don't think we're going to have severe weather there in towards South Georgia. So that's the good news as we're looking, as we're tracking things here. I really don't think you're going to have the severe weather up there into that part of central. Maybe get some flooding in southeast Georgia based on some of the models. But I don't think, if anything, I don't think we're going to get anything tornadic or severe in southwest to south central Georgia. That would seem unlikely here as we're looking. I don't really think we're going to have any flooding with the flash flood type of warning either, but could be some heavy rain. We need to rain up there badly. The drought index, I still have that in here from last week, so let me pull that in because that hadn't changed. I mean, it might be changing, but they don't update it but once a week. Let me get that in here. Give me just a second, and we'll pull that in from our graphic source. So we need the rain. We need it very badly, obviously, as we're looking at it, as we're tracking things. So there is the benefit of some of this, even though it has been, you know, unlike last week where it was more just benefits. We had that one warning in Dixie County area. This week, especially the fringes and just that setup area, there's been a lot more adverse impacts. So, you know, the flooding toward Mount Dora and Brevard County, and then the damage there at the RV park in the Mexico Beach area. So this is drought monitor as of last Thursday. You can see we had the extreme drought there. Gadsden, portions of that zone, Leon, Jefferson, Madison, Hamilton, and Swanee. So, yeah, we need the rain, and we'll take it if we don't get a severe. You know, we're getting this right now down in Liberty and Franklin. You know, that zone there, and McCullough coming up. You know, it's something where we do need, you know, the rain. We just don't want the adverse consequences that come with it as we're looking and as we're tracking things. So again, we're just trying to keep you guys up to date here on all of this. As I know, they just gone ahead and canceled Liberty, but they're continuing Franklin and Gulf counties here with this warning until 9:45. So we'll get back to the map in a second. There, that map. But this other map here, the Georgia Drought Monitor, you can kind of see what we're talking about with all that extreme drought there in the north southwest and south central Georgia. You guys need to rain up there, so if we don't get it severe, it's going to be a positive. But still, you know, may not be near enough. You know, it's just such a give and take here as we're looking, as we're tracking things. I'm going to bounce back. I know some of those areas in central Florida didn't need to rain as much, and they ended up getting way too much. So I know Brevard didn't need it. Lake, some of that area didn't need it a little, but you know, it's such a give and take here, and those areas didn't really need it, and they got too much. So it's very tricky as we're looking at, as we're tracking things here. It's not, you know, just how it works. You know, whatever weather's going to do, it's going to do, and it doesn't necessarily, you know, get into the spots where we need that precip, obviously. So down here, this is why we're on out this stuff to the north. That's a lot less, you know, nasty looking. But you see here north of Krills, we're watching that heavy rain there in toward that area. You can see here that heavy wind in toward that area as well. Moving over toward Carabel here over the next little bit. Again, we're trying to keep you safe. We're trying to keep you informed. Again, this volatile weather this morning. We got to stay on top of this, obviously. As we're looking and as we're tracking things, we have to just be on top of these situations, obviously. We can't let our guard down because all of a sudden something can tighten up on us, and then we'll have problems. So we have to be very cognizant here of what's going on You see around Krills, it's just very slightly weaker. But that's moving over toward the Caribou area, give or take here in the next little bit. Be aware of that. Be ready for that. There, we have some stuff coming up from the south here as well. I'll have to watch that here too. So, just got to be very aware of that here, obviously. The latest update on this morning at 9:15. Let me read that off here. Of course, we got rid of Liberty out of this, but for portions of Gulf and Franklin at 9:14, severe thunderstorms are located along a line extending from 14 miles northwest to Caribou at 6 miles northwest of East Point, 18 miles southwest to Port St. Joe, moving east at 20 miles an hour, 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts, quarter size hail. Both possibilities here. Hail damage to vehicles could occur. Expect some wind damage to roof side and trees. East Point, Apalachicola, Port St. Joe, White City, Franklin, 11 Mile, Odina, Cape San Blas, Indian Pass, Beverly Bay City, Willis Landing, Apalachicola Airport Air, Simmons Bayou, Hayes Place, Fort Gaston, 9 Mile, Buck Siding, Morgan Place, and High Bluff here all under this warning. You know, Tallahassee, you're doing pretty good. Just the light rain. We need that. I mean, the road will be a little slick. Be careful, but this down here is where we don't need that wind. It's a little weaker still, frame by frame, the last few. That is a positive sign. It's weakened a good little bit here in recent frames, but we still got to be very cognizant of what's going on here in Franklin County this morning. So, again, we're watching this. I'm going to just take a very, very quick break here, gather some more information. We've been talking straight here since about 7 o'clock. I'll be back here shortly with more, so just keep it tuned here to Cloud Weather. I'll keep you guys up to date here as we continue to watch this severe thunderstorm warning in Franklin County. Again, we'll be back here with more momentarily.
This is a clouds weather alert.
Meteorologist Casey Cloud back here in the Weather Center right now at 9:22 on this Monday morning. We're tracking a severe thunderstorm warning still for portions of Franklin County here until 9:45. Looking around that Cruz area here, that does look a little weaker, which is good. We're getting some more of this to become a little bit more linear in nature, so not as much compared to earlier, that supercellular structure. But we're going to continue to watch, continue to track it here just a little bit longer as we have this warning that goes to 9:45, and they may still very well extend this in toward Carrollville here as we look ahead in toward the timeline. So have to be very, watchful here. But that does look about the weakest it's looked here since it's been on for almost 2.5 hours now. We're seeing winds on the velocity wind pattern only upwards of about 50 in base velocity. That still shows a little bit stronger, but the way this is oriented, I'm a little more skeptical about those, 60 winds reaching, but definitely at about 50 in there now, in toward Franklin. So that, storm relative still wants to sit a little stronger, though. It's still a possibility. That last scan there, it started to uptick again, though. So we'll have to be very mindful of that as we go ahead and look here. Let me go ahead and show you what we're dealing with. You see some of that rotation earlier on, current rotation. Let me go ahead and show you some more views here. I know it's interesting to see Central Florida all dry right now, but it wasn't the case last night. All that rain coming down hour after hour there around Mount Dora and those areas there in Brevard County, roads being in some cases washed out, other cases sinkholes forming. So a very problematic situation obviously down there. Some very problematic stuff. Speaking of problematic, though, even more problematic than all of that, as problematic as it gets here in the meteorology community. Let me go ahead and show you here all the way down. You see the infrared satellite here. We definitely have storms up here, but the overall pressure pattern helping influence this some. But look at our hurricane down here. It's not headed our way by any stretch. It is going, through Jamaica, eastern Cuba, around Guantanamo Bay, and then in the Bahamas there, and then off, away. But still having some influence with the interactions of pressures here. So that is interesting as we continue to give you guys the very latest. I'll go ahead and look here further up. Again, we have this severe thunderstorm warning to 9:45. Looking for any type of interesting signatures and like debris tracker, not seeing that, which is good. Back it up some. Go forward. Looks like it's wanting to go a little more southeast. So that could get it off the coast a little quicker here. And this down to the south with that notch, it looks like it's kind of merging the line, almost a little east here even. Which, would be some good news. So kind of go between some of the different volumetric scans. Again, look at some of the different temperatures. You see that temperature contrast between north and south. Instability here in Florida, we'll watch that obviously. Your supercell composite values, significant tornado parameters. We'll have to watch to see if stuff develops later on. Again, the models have not handled things well, so we have to just be aware here, cognizant of how things can change. Going to run some of our model guidance here out a little bit, 11 a.m. here on this view. 12 o'clock, this is the latest run of the HRRR that we can put in here. See some stuff out there in the Gulf. We'll watch later this afternoon and see if that tries to hold together, but a lot of it could just slip further and further south and or the Gulf and not end up, coming over land. And in Central Florida, more rain they don't need there. We started to have some development that, rain. We do need rain up here. You see that development later on. We'll have to watch to see if any of those are strong. That could be as late as 8 o'clock tonight even, so we'll have to watch for that. But there'll be a lull in here for a while based on what we're seeing, at least in the model and within the covered area. Formal risk only includes the area pretty much where we had that warning right now, give or take, but we're just going to have to continue to track things here as we look ahead, as we go moment by moment, just to see if things, change a little bit here. Not out of the question. But definitely looking a little bit, nicer in terms of a weakening trend here in Franklin County. Again, we're still with you here. It's 9:28 in the morning. Been with you for a better part of 2.5 hours. Wind damage still a possibility here. Toward Franklin County. Of course, we cover 62 counties here. I'll go ahead and see our covered map. Just to reiterate that, we're in Bradford. We're watching out for right now Franklin County there. Liberty, they dropped the warning there as watched is, confined to the south. But Franklin and Gulf counties there, we still have that warning in effect. So Franklin, again, is in our covered area. Continuing to watch, continuing to update you guys. See some significant parameters there at a 1 there. Supercell composite over a 4. Instability there over 2,000 joules per kilogram. And we just have to continue to watch the trends. Again, the trends seemingly continue to improve here in terms of the winds, but there still could be some issues here, especially south of Caribou. This is not even, earlier on we were close to a tornado warning. Now this is very marginally severe. As you look here, you see how bright some of that got there northwest of Krills, and now it's seemingly wanted to dive further east, southeast to southeast here and kind of get over the water here pretty quick between East Point and Caribou. So that's some good news, obviously. These movements have been very erratic here. We were watching that earlier on with this. Even as it was trying to come in, so it's trying to come into the picture. Very erratic here with some of these, movements, and that can kind of, make things a little bit unpredictable sometimes. It's a tricky pattern overall, obviously, as we've been alluding to. Let's check some of these rainfall 1 hour numbers. You see here north of Krills, some areas over 3 inches here in just the last hour. Luckily, that's not in too populated or urban of an area. That's obviously helpful here in terms of not getting, as big of a flood threat here to emerge on us. But we'll have to continue to track all of that, obviously. Storm total, it pales into comparison as we're looking there further over toward Mexico Beach. So there is 4 inches or so, and they already had an RV park issue with all the damage there. Franklin, Gulf, and McCullough now. New severe thunderstorm warning until 10:15. So we're going to kind of stay along the coast here some with this to kind of, be on this side of caution as we're looking and as we're tracking things here. They're tracking that a little bit further off toward the east, even keeping the northern fringes of that. They don't look as nasty, kind of included in a polygon here all the way to that, area there. To just technically it gets into McCullough a little bit, about the McCullough Franklin border. So Again, continuing to keep you advised on that. Let me read you the text this morning on the Weather Service there in Tallahassee. At 9:30 there, Eastern Time, severe thunderstorms are located along a line extending from 6 miles northwest of Carroll to 8 miles northeast of St. George Island, to 10 miles south of Apalachicola, to 14 miles south of Port St. Joe, moving east at 30 miles an hour. 60-mile-an-hour wind gust possibility. Caribou, East Point, Apalachicola, St. George Island, Franklin, Caribou Beach, Royal Bluff, 11 miles, St. George Island State Park, Odina, Cape San Blas, Indian Pass, Beverly, Bay City, Apalachicola Airport, Simmons Bayou, Hayes Place, 9 Mile, Alligator Point, and St. Teresa. So, again, a new severe thunderstorm warning until 10:15 as we're looking here, as we're tracking there around the Krills area, trying to just, monitor things there. Just there on the side of Carson with us, since we had the history of the damage there over toward that RV park there around Mexico Beach. The damaging winds, at minimum, we had a gust of 58 reported. Probably had winds stronger than that, but at least 58-mile-an-hour winds coming through there confirmed with an anemometer reading there, a ambient weather station, according to the Weather Service there in Tallahassee. Could have been a tornado, though. We had that very strong circulation that weakened some, but we didn't get a deep debris signature, but there definitely could have been a tornado in there at some point. Still have some power outages remaining in that vicinity. I know, we just had such high confidence here, some danger. We wanted to go into alert mode because we, had the uncertainty here as well after what happened yesterday in Central Florida. We didn't know exactly what might happen. We had some concerns there, of this as it was coming on in. We could definitely have had some damage in, spots in our covered area, though. Some of those might have been more rural here as we're looking into Franklin County, and let's have a little bit of Wakulla County in here as well, as we're giving you guys the very latest on all this. Very small portion of Wakulla technically in here, south of Panacea. We're seeing some of this heavier rain down toward the south here. See around Carabel. Again, some wind in here, but not like it was earlier on. Let me go ahead and keep giving you some updates here. I'm going to run a loop here of everything for you. Last few hours. Just getting that rendered here. As we keep you informed. I know the one polygon for Franklin and Gulf is going to go away at 9:45, but Franklin, Gulf, and Wakulla at 10:15. I'm going to loop this around here for you. Okay, it's ready now, so let's pull that in. And seeing that very slow movement there. I'm hopeful, as this gets further down, it'll kind of sink down in the Gulf. And we won't end up having more warnings for Taylor and Dixie, but that can't be ruled out here. We'll have to watch. We'll have to monitor. Not out of the question here. Again, still keeping you up to date. Just going through some different information here. This not be anything too crazy for dark, but things are unpredictable as I've alluded to. So just remain on guard. There is a thunderstorm risk here later on, not here this morning. This is your tornado risk, but here's thunderstorm risk right here. It does encompass the whole covered area technically, our Georgia, southwest, south central Georgia would be a rogue, lightning strike here or there. We do see a little bit heavier rain action trying to get going in Seminole County right now. So let's see that real quick. Not severe up that way, but let me go ahead and kind of see there. Chattahoochee over toward Reynoldsville, some heavier downpour action there. So we'll watch that. We'll monitor that, obviously. You see the contrast. South Florida in the 80s and Georgia, central Georgia in the 50s. That is a big contrast for sure. As we continue to watch things, continue to track here. I know, this is how it can be sometimes, obviously. I know hearing stories over the years, you go up I-75 or something, or I-95 from South Florida to Georgia, and it's like a whole different climate sometimes. Not, as much as it would be like maybe December or January, but seeing some of that difference here, especially if you're going like 75, because, 60s around Valdosta versus 70s around Brunswick here, so. As we continue to give you guys the latest. Looking around that Caribou area. We're watching there, obviously. Some of this offshore, some of this is, a situation where some of it could try to get closer, but the geography might kind of limit it, really. It kind of slips on by, at least for now. We'll watch Taylor and Dixie and the like later on, but again, giving you the latest here. Continuing to watch this. Looking quite a bit weaker at this moment. They may drop this morning if these trends continue. And we have the stuff coming from the south. And let's look at this angle. This is a little stronger here, but this is definitely about the weakest it's looked. Which is some good news. Still some heavy downpours though coming on through and toward that area. Definitely seeing that weakening trend. I mean, it's looking way weaker there. As we're looking west of Caribou. Still some heavy rain though that has fallen last hour. A storyline north of Krills. We still have some lightning in there worth noting. Whenever thunder roars go indoors. Don't have any of that though as we're looking, east of that massive rain. There is a little bit here and there, believe it or not, in Leon and Jefferson, even though there's not, that's kind of a storyline. Even though there's not, very heavy downpours and they're light to moderate rain, nothing severe. There's a good bit of lightning, so be kind of careful with that. That can catch people off guard, quite honestly. But not anything as we're looking to the east there. I'm gonna see if any of these are cloud to ground or these are all cloud to cloud here. Hopefully they're all cloud to cloud, but the ones around Leon and the like. That's a little surprising to see anything up there, quite honestly. It can happen, but it's not something you would maybe be thinking about here, and that can catch folks by surprise because this isn't the heaviest rain for that. Yeah, just had a couple miles away from FSU here 4 minutes ago. There was a ground strike here 3 miles away just 4 minutes ago. So even though we're not getting severe up there, we are getting some lightning. So be careful there. Even though it wouldn't be readily apparent. I mean, you're in the rumbles of thunder, but if you just look at the light to moderate rain on radar, you don't really think you're going to have much lightning. We did have a ground strike here just a few minutes ago. So if there was like football that was going to be played right now, it would have to be delayed. I mean, so that's concerning here in that way. It kind of catches you by surprise a little bit. Because this, I'll say it to you in a second, it's not something you would really expect that much lightning in. And you did there's at least a report based on the FSU Weather Stem of at least one ground strike here in recent minutes there in the FSU area a few miles away. So that's a point, worth noting. No severe thunderstorm warning there like we have down south. But still, just a tricky situation as I put all that lightning data on here. We had to have it off earlier so we could see some of these colors a little bit better here with the winds and the light. But we're watching this move toward Caribou here again. That decaying trend seems to be the story. I mean, I think we're pretty close to them just going ahead and dropping this and putting this significant weather advisory out instead, because these winds have really dropped, by far. I mean, earlier we literally had numbers that added up to 150 with the winds here. I mean, when it was offshore coming in on Mexico Beach, and it weakened about 100 probably when it was coming over them on that. But right now we're seeing maybe if you add everything together 45, 50 miles an hour. That's possible in here. But I'm not really seeing the severe anymore. So there's still some lightning. Still quite a bit of lightning moving into Caribou. So whenever thunder roars, you want to go indoors there in the Caribou community, obviously, as you're looking at Lanark Village there as well. Again, this is a far contrast, from what we had a few hours ago, though, approaching the coast. Some of the stuff right offshore is still kind of noteworthy. See if some of it tries to. Yeah, I don't necessarily think it will, but it could very, barely clip down here. I think it's going to pass this south and easterly. I'll watch later for, again, tailoring some of those areas to see if this kind of holds together enough to, refired into something. I'm not really seeing it right now. With this, it's good, obviously. I'm still with you guys, just checking some information. See this yellow box here? I don't see much rotation like what we had earlier in the last hour. Just with the history of this, I kind of, with it going over more popular areas now around Caribou, I kind of hate to just wrap covered now with there still being some storm action coming through, but just not nearly much there as it was earlier on. But Caribou, you guys have to be cognizant of this. Over toward St. Teresa. Of course, not severe in Tallahassee, but we do have those wet conditions out there. We have cameras there, unlike to the south where we don't really have them. So, on the Florida 5-1 views. So let me go ahead and try to pull up some cameras around Tallahassee. Just see some of those wet conditions here. I'll go ahead and pull up Jim Lee Road and Orange Avenue. Let me go ahead and pull that in here. You can see those are slick roads, so just be careful. We do need to rain though in these areas. So in the lightning, those rogue strikes, if they're actually hitting stuff, that presents another issue. If you're not getting enough rain, that can actually start a fire or something. That would not be good, obviously. So we have to be careful with that. But by the way, there's been a report there in Mexico Beach now, damage to the El Governor Hotel, based on emergency management report. It happened around 6:30 Central, 7:30 Eastern there this morning. And we're looking at as we're tracking things. So, again, trying to give you guys the very latest on everything. As I'm looking through some stuff here in the Weather Center, we'll get closer to the FSU campus with a camera. Just the rain, not severe up there, and road with lightning strikes, you know, as we alluded to, if you're there. Let's see, slick on the roads there for sure, around the campus area. Macomb Street and Tennessee Street. Telling that story. Just trying to keep you up to date here. Just checking the information. So again, I appreciate everybody tuning in and trusting me. I'm going to check another angle on this. Even further up, I mean, the winds look a little stronger on Caribou, but they're not overwhelming looking. Again, here it looks very, you know, mild in terms of the wind, maybe 40 to 50 on the gust. I really doubt we're getting 60 in there. Really surprising. Looking from this radar, this side, you know, a little bit more wind there. Let me back the trends up on this though. See how bright it was earlier on, and it keeps kind of, you know, I switch it around there. It looks weaker and weaker. But a little bit of an upper level spin at least in there. Care about a St. Teresa next little bit. 40 to 50 on the gust, I would say. Again, I could have a gust to 60 in there. Not impossible, but I think it'd be less likely. I'm going to check some information here. Bear with me. Again, obviously, we're still watching that terrible hurricane in terms of Melissa, the Cat 5. The Cat 5 there, you know, heading toward Jamaica. It's going to be a tragic event, obviously, as we're getting toward that area. Let's give you another look there at the infrared satellite. We'll switch sources here now. I mean, it looks just awful. They're headed toward Jamaica. It's going to be a devastating situation. So I'm looking and tracking it. There's anemometer stations in Kingston and in Montego Bay, and you got to wonder how long those will report for even. I mean, you know, it depends on exactly where the worst the winds go, because there will be more of a corridor with those, but the flooding is going to be all over the place. The surge is going to hit some of the areas, probably around Kingston, even if they don't get the extreme winds. Maybe they don't get the gust, you know, well into the hundreds in terms of miles per hour, but they get that surge, the low-lying areas. So it's just a multifaceted, multi-hazard event there. It's going to be so difficult for those people there. It's going to be awful in Jamaica, obviously, with this headed their way. So, see that there. So, obviously, very well defined. Minimum central pressure down to 913 millibars. Moving west at 3, but it's going to make that turn right into Jamaica, it would seem. You know, where it hits, it's not going to matter much in the flooding, you know, in terms of that, as much as the wind. You know, where that concentrates, but it's going to be very bad for Jamaica, the historic Category 5, third Cat 5 in the basin this season, but this is the one impacting the land there around Jamaica so severely with the catastrophic impacts it would seem. So Just not good there. You see some of this on the infrared satellite, the pattern in reality here we actually have the pressure pattern contrast kind of helping to amplify some of this up here. We have some boundaries, but you know, Melissa in a way helping some of this be worse than it would otherwise be. Help with that flooding unfortunately last night towards central Florida. As we look at Carabel again, I'm going to check some wind numbers on another source I have in Franklin County. Let's see if there's anything here. Check, see if we have any numbers around Carabel maybe. I'm just not sure if the winds are too high there anymore, so. Yeah, I'm not really seeing it anymore. We're going to go ahead and wrap coverage. I know if we had a tornado warning, we wouldn't, but if it's a thunderstorm warning, we can use this correct. And I've been with this for a while. I hate, in a way to drop coverage to the more populated area in our area impacted, but it's just not looking like, you know, anything that's really severe anymore. I mean, we've been giving the heads up for a while there around Carabel, Lanark Village there, obviously. Could have gust 40 to 50. I doubt we'll get severe winds in there, but I guess a gust to 40 or 50 could, since we haven't had too much bad weather lately, could cause a little bit of damage, so be aware of that there as we're looking along US Highway 98. So just be aware of that there, obviously, as we're looking and as we're tracking things. You know, I'm watching it here. If I need to cut back in, we will, but I think we're going to just drop the coverage for now. Again, we're going to be keeping everybody in our thoughts and prayers down south in Jamaica. You know, just really, you know, watching that situation, keeping everybody in our thoughts and prayers down south there with Melissa in Jamaica, that hurricane there coming that way. And if we need to break back in for anything in regards to that or local, we will. We'll probably stream infrared satellite at some point in there for Jamaica, you know, and Melissa, major hurricane Cat 5, Hurricane Melissa coming on in. So that'll probably be, you know, later tonight and tomorrow. But we'll be watching our local stuff here too with this to see how, you know, things change evolve, because they could be a little more volatile, shifting around. You just never know because of, you know, how things were so unpredictable yesterday in Central Florida, for instance, just south of the area, all that rain, and in our area, except for St. John's, that little small area there, you know, that could handle a little bit more. Not in St. Augustine, where it's more urban, where they couldn't have handled 5 inches, you know, so much. An area of St. John's did get 5 inches yesterday, but most areas in our area, a little bit of Columbia got some pretty heavy rain too that could handle it, more rural, but a lot of area didn't get that much rain at all with this, you know, 18-inch total there, give or take, in the county just south of area in Lake County. So that's the storyline there. A lot of this seems to be starting to get close now to the coastal waters, if not in it, to some degree here around Carabel and Lanark Village. I mean, we're seeing winds of about 30 on velocity. The Andes together, maybe winds to about maybe 40 at the most. I don't even see that, but I mean, I could, if I add this back here, that's 30, okay. I guess you could say 45 to 50 if you really, I mean, want to be generous on this. Checking one more velocity mode here. I mean, it was way worse earlier on. It's way broad now with the wind pattern. Still something, you know, St. Teresa, you're technically under a warning, so at least they're 10-15. You know, just be extra vigilant here in this area, but not as nasty as it was looking earlier on. That is for sure. This right here is showing some wind pixels of 35 miles an hour there, so we'll keep watching. If we need to pop back in, we will. But for now, thanks so much for tuning in and trusting me. I'm meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center. Again, been watching this here along the coast for a while. You know, and we are with this in our covered area right now in Franklin County, but again, it's not near as impressive as it was, and that's a positive sign, a positive trend. We're going to wrap the stream. Thanks so much for tuning in and trusting me. Stay safe.